This is Timely Greetings, Volume 1, Number 10, pages 20 to 21. And let's see how he uses this term again, the living spirit of prophecy. Then it was that the prophets Haggai and Zechariah were called to their prophetic office, and commissioned to receive and to organize the builders for the deserted temple project. See Haggai chapter 1 verse 1 and Zechariah chapter 1 verse 1. The happy and surprising result was that within 4 short years the stately spiritual edifice was quickly finished, whereas all the previous and strenuous efforts of the kings and people, covering a period of over 30 years, completely failed. See Ezra 6:15. Let us now realistically consider why the builders' efforts and the king's decrees at first failed, and why at last they succeeded. So notice here, he's setting up what he's about to go into. In other words, he has a point to deliver, and he's saying, let's consider why is it. He just pointed out that, they were there trying to build the temple and it failed for, over 30 years. And then all of a sudden, something happened that caused the work to be finished in a very short period of time, within 4 short years. So he's saying, let us consider what made the difference. So continuing on, he says, before Haggai and Zechariah were called to the prophetic office, many of the Jews returned from Babylon to Jerusalem, although the majority remained in Babylon. That is, the builders voluntarily went to build only because the captivity had ended, and because the king had decreed that the temple of God should be built. But both the builders and the king's efforts were a complete failure. All came to naught. Then it was that through his prophets, Haggai and Zechariah, God directed the work, and then it was that they quickly finished. In other words, not before the Lord took the reins in his own hands through the spirit of prophecy did the work prosper. In fact, sacred history proves that nothing has ever prospered in God's work without the living spirit of prophecy in its midst. Now let me ask you, what is the point that he just made? What is the intention of those words? What was Victor Houteff thinking when he wrote that down? Well, I think hopefully you just figured out the answer. I think it should be straightforward. And let us just be honest with ourselves and not try to harmonize this and fit this in and twist it to fit what we think other parts of the message are teaching. Now, this is an important point, and I'm going to try to make this concept as clear as possible. When we approach any written text, there's 2 ways of looking at this, and these 2 ways are very much confliction with each other. One way is we approach a text with the simple desire to understand what it's saying. Another way to approach the text is to approach it and then try to fit it in with other things that we think it should fit in with. And this is mostly the second way of approaching text is usually done with something that somebody has beliefs or preconceived ideas about, and in the context of, or in the situation of the text that they are approaching being something which they themselves revere in some way. But see, this is what happens. If we approach a text with the thought of thinking that it is our duty to harmonize it with another text, all of a sudden now we are about to take the text out of its context, right? And there's the saying, a text out of its context is a pretext, but we don't want to do that. For instance, if I approach the Bible and I read one text, and let's just say that I approach the subject of the millennium. And I know this is a controversial subject, but I'm sure I'm speaking primarily to Seventh-day Adventists here, at least, if not primarily to Davidians. Let's say I approach the subject of the millennium, and I read Revelation 20. And I know this is talking about the kingdom of God, because it's talking about the saints reigning with Christ for 1,000 years and everything. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, there's other subjects and other texts in the Bible that talk about the kingdom of God, such as Ezekiel 36, 37, Isaiah 11, Isaiah 2, all these things. So these things must go together. So I'm going to try and harmonize the two together, because if I just let Revelation 20 say what it says, then all of a sudden that is out of context with all these other passages. So now I'm going to have to try and fit them together. And the reason why I bring that example up is because that's what many people in the world do, many Christians, and that's how they end up taking all these passages which apply to the premillennial kingdom and applying it in the millennium, because they're not just letting each text say what it says for itself. And then they end up with this doctrine that doesn't really fit with any of the texts. And I'll just mention, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what the premillennial kingdom is, I do have a playlist called the Premillennial Kingdom, and there you can see videos relating to that subject, or you can have a playlist with videos dealing with Isaiah's prophecies, another one with Micah's and Ezekiel's, and you can go to any of those playlists, and there you will find information concerning that topic. But anyways, continuing here, what did we see was the point that was being made in this statement? Was it not, and I'm asking you to please just be honest and look at the text for what it says, is this paragraph that we just read not clearly saying that the thing that made the difference for the temple builders and the king in completing their project of building the temple was that the Lord rose up prophets? Is that not what was said? And was it not also said that that was called the spirit of prophecy and the living spirit of prophecy? So hopefully you can see that that's pretty clear.